logo. It's on the logo right now.
Okay.
And I'm going to watch it transition from the logo as I make a dramatic entrance, only because I'm doing it all and it's DIY, that I want to make sure that the auto thing is working. There it goes. You're there. Okay. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Oh my heavens. Let's say hello to everybody out
Hello
there in Mount Angel Theater Studio land, and John Deschler and OSTA land, and Facebook space, and the universe of humanity that has been mustered and managed the last 150 years that I take so many issues with. This is my dear, lovely friend and co-collaborator in the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association, Ms. Leslie Polson. Please give her a round of applause.
Hi.
While I adjust our audio. And I'm just going to make sure that this is in a perfectly comfortable and relaxed place.
Okay, I didn't do it. I didn't see it.
That's all right. And that's about it.
Okay, will it stay up?
Yeah, I think it will. And that's it. Just make sure you're, like you are, about 6, 7, 8 inches.
Okay, so is this good?
And yeah, I think it
Okay.
is. And so now what I do is, and I like to share, everybody who knows me knows that I like to share. And so, Leslie, I'm now going, look, to my YouTube page for the Mount Angel Theater Studio. And there's the Wilhoit Springs I was talking about. That's the image that I put on the, and it says live. See that?
So we were
So
live.
now theoretically, although I got to, that's us. So now I got to go here, and I can share, copy link, and now on my phone I can start to share it. So what I'll do is I'll go to Facebook. I mean, you know most of this, but I'm just showing you exactly how I've been doing this. So I go here, and I say join us. But my thumb is too fat, so I don't type well with a thumb. And then I press paste, and then I go next, or I go post, or whatever. How do I do that? Next. Oh, and then I got to say where. So I want it on mine, where I have so many friends, and then also here. And then I say share. Now, if I wanted to, I could text it to Debbie, to Sally. Well, I don't know about Sally Sue, maybe. Anyways, not to belabor it all, but this is a DIY spot. John Deschler here, coming to you from the Mount Angel Theater Studio in beautiful downtown Mount Angel, Oregon. Town of 3,500, roughly equivalent to my high school in the San Fernando Valley in the 1970s. And I'm here with my dear friend and co-collaborator and manager, if you will, of the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association, Leslie Polson. We've been talking about this for a long time, right?
It's finally
and
here.
It's finally happening.
Finally.
We're driving the ship, and I'm texting people and making sure that they have access to what we do, and they can check us and critique us and what we say.
And school starts next week for
And
most
school
people.
started some places this week and some places next week, and I'm just trying to manage my preparation for the Oktoberfest and the school year. That's
the phones are live now for substitute teachers.
And
And we are
everything
filling in already.
Oh yeah, you were at.
I was in Woodburn.
Now that was your first day?
That was my first day.
And that was as a IA.
That was as an EA.
An EA, an
educational assistant.
And
helping kids.
That's
get
why
ready
she's the
for
president,
school.
by the way. I don't know if you caught that, but Leslie's been at this a lot for a long time, either in and around subbing, in and around state government, and I've always, I want to tell you this, have appreciated. We are so lucky to have this core group of people who have managed to facilitate and keep alive this organization and this idea of OSTA, the idea of a substitute teacher association,
Right.
period.
So, period. So that people have a professional place to go. So if I have a problem, who do you call?
And, someday soon, I'm going to try to get Phyllis in here. Phyllis was the instigator originally 49 years ago of the organization, and she still joins us on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that level of commitment that it's inspired me to connect with you all, in the first place, when I came to you in desperation because of perceived malfeasance in a particular district out there that,
it's very easy to be a naughty teacher and get into trouble. And sometimes you have no clue what you did. And you're like going, what did I do?
So a lot of the work that OSTA has done and that we are going to be continuing to attempt to do moving forward is an advocacy for professional treatment for substitute teachers, fair pay, of course, and Phyllis made big progress on that in the last, when was that big?
Well, she started it in 1975, and it was...
But the minimum pay...
That was in the 1980s.
1980s, see. And you guys, I love the fact that, that's why I want to get all this on tape, as it were. There's no tape involved, but
it started in 1980, and it's gotten now, it's up to 190% of a beginning year teacher's salary.
On a daily basis.
On a daily
basis. With no guarantees.
No guarantee.
With no protections of due process.
No protection.
What I find so interesting about that is if you listen to the new governor's task force in the legislature on substitutes that we've all been monitoring, and our dear Debbie Ferry has been managing so well to represent all subs in the state because they only had the wisdom to put one substitute on the task force.
There was another substitute.
There was another one, but she couldn't make it.
She never could make it.
And then they never allowed anybody to replace.
And there was nobody to replace her.
So such a strange process that, we might talk more about those types of things later. I don't want to dwell on any one thing right now.
But, it is what it is.
It is what it is. But we are so lucky to have Debbie there vouching for us because she's a force unto herself and so smart and so experienced, again, with all of her unique background, having worked for the state and having gotten her teacher credential so long ago. And all of our board members, particularly, and any of the past board members and active members still, including our illustrious figurehead, Phyllis Kirkwood, are so bright and seasoned individuals. But the bottom line is commitment. They all committed. That's why this organization exists. So there is this task force currently right now going on in the Salem, in the state legislature, that we've all been trying to, like I say, monitor and nurture one way or the other and root for, and it's been lackluster in many regards. And the departure point in the conversation, which I'm coming back to now, was that if you ask any of the other players in the so-called substitute universe, they would say we do have due process.
We do. That was a good...
But we don't.
Because I was talking to somebody that was out the door before she got fired, and her question was, do I have to stop fights? And I told her, we are not trained to stop fights. You can hurt students if you don't have the right training. And
then every district plausibly, according to my own experience, and I sub in 5 different districts, has probably different guidelines and rules about all of those things.
Right. So
there's no standardization in this state. I find that nonsensical and very difficult, in case you didn't gather that. Well,
you can get hurt stopping a fight.
Oh, my goodness. And so the point is, though, that I was making is when it took me 7 months to figure out what was going on with a certain district, and then they and their service provider attempted to process me with whatever amount of so-called due process that they acted like was there. I went through those motions, as you may recall, and it was obvious that was just a cover, if you will, false reality.
Well, you can
There
get
really wasn't any due process, but they had a little bit of a charade that they put you through to make the average, perhaps, substitute think that you did have a little due process, and you just go along your way, little sheep, and do what everybody else wants you to do.
You were naughty, and you don't know what you did.
This is the level of minutia that we have to deal with, because we, as the president and vice president of the Substitute Teacher Association in Oregon, hear, what do you think we hear most from? Substitutes who have been very poorly treated, most often for no good reason whatsoever.
Well, we get emails. I was
emails,
there.
Phone calls. I called Sally Sue the first.
I don't know what I did.
Yeah, I don't know what I did. Well, it took me 7 months to figure out what not even to know what I did, but to begin to figure out what they were doing to me.
So
by putting me on a blacklist, right?
So you get put on a list, and you have no clue what you did. I had lunch with second graders and I was told I couldn't come back because the regular teacher had lunch with their second graders. And so I had lunch with second graders, but I sent the students that were running around to have lunch with the regular schoolmates. And the principal told me I was not supposed to have lunch with the second graders, even though the regular teacher had lunch with them all the time. And most other schools I go to, students will have lunch with you.
And I thought, as a mature adult who's, worked for a gazillion companies and institutions in my life, that at that point, if that was the position the guy wanted to take, go ahead and share it with you. But what you obviously experienced was him using that against you.
Right, I got excluded.
You got excluded. And this is what we see happening over and over and over again. And then at the same time, districts, schools are doing what? They're crying about a shortage of substitutes.
They have no subs, but you look at, and we learn about this because people call us. They come to our meeting. I don't know what I did. Or the principal told me I'm not supposed to trip on a backpack in a classroom.
The interesting thing about Oregon is it's so large physically that we have basically these two different kinds of physical realities. You have more remote areas with fewer human resources, and then you have the I-5 corridor with all the human resources, basically Portland, Salem, Eugene, Corvallis, etc. Even where we are right now, in the in-between area, they have that much more limited resources, I believe, because you're not going to get people on our wages as substitutes to drive from Portland to Mount Angel to substitute on any regular basis, No, and to fight traffic and spend hours on the freeway, etc. So we've been breaking this down, we've been processing it. They've been doing it, the organization, a long time before I got here. But I'm trying to bring what I can bring and my strengths to the situation, the communication, this live stream. I photographed all the Substitute of the Teacher of the Year posters for Sally Sue because I'm so grateful to some of these people like yourself. But as we know, there are other senior citizen members and supporters who've been at this for 30, 40, and now almost 50 years.
Yeah, many people have a lot of experience teaching, and they like it. They know everyone in the high school. They know people from the first grade through high school graduation. They've been there. Sometimes they go to their weddings. We're talking about a large community of people who love the school. So there are substitute teachers in some districts that will come in and say, I will see you throughout your whole school experience. And there are lots of people that do this.
That's part of the sweet spot
That is in
of
there.
of the rural part, particularly more the rural outskirts part of substitute teaching in Oregon, I would say. Again, because the populations are small. This town's 3,500. There's a town at 10,000, 4 miles from here. There's another town at 28,000, 8 miles from here. It's a unique physical layout. Logistics have to be incorporated. We don't all live in virtual realities. Thank God, But the due process, the fair compensation, reasonable environment to work in situations are what we kind of are trying to focus on and get somewhat as much as possible standardized in the state. But there's a lot of resistance to that, and that's particularly because of the historic local control born from districts. And so that's where I keep seeing a lot of the friction and a lot of the rub going down. By the way, if you happen to be a substitute, and I have not yet posted this, I'm not going to. Well, when we're done today, Les, I'm going to post this in a bunch of the substitute rooms in Facebook. They can watch it when we're done. And then maybe next time I can go live and post it and share the live thing on that with some of the rooms, so some of the people nationally, although it's not as imperative necessarily, because I'm not watching for comments right now or anything. It'd be too much. I got to worry if the lights are going to explode in our face. But
Fight.
and everything else. Managing the conversation and the situation. But I wanted to mention that this task force that we mentioned isn't quite over. It's over in the next couple weeks, right?
Right.
But all of the meetings, most of which have been on Zoom, are available on the Oregon.gov website. You just have to search it properly, and you can find
the Substitute Teacher Task Force.
Substitute Teacher Task Force, and you can go review all of the content. And even after what you and I have just talked about here, Les, we've already typified and kind of outlined to some extent a lot of what, if anybody in SciFo goes and watches those things right now, they're going to go, oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh, that's what they were talking about. Oh, look at those people who represent the for-profit based company. We'll see what they're guided by, their guiding light, right?
Right. So 3 strikes and you're out if they have 3 complaints.
Yeah.
And there is no due process, you're out.
No due process. We've discovered the last year and a half, the hidden star rating system that's available in the software substrate. There's so many subjects you and I could sit here and choose to focus on right now. It is a little bit overwhelming. So I want to remind us both that we don't have to worry about it, because we will have the opportunity to do this again. You don't have to look at them. They can look at us. That's why I got the painting and everything. We're engaged. We're sharing our conversation. The one that we generally have, too, is the one that we're sharing. And then ideally more, because we can, is the premise that I'm going after here. I just remind you.
Okay.
Mayberry meets McNeil-Lair in Mount Angel. So that implies a lot of things. The Mayberry part, in my mind, is about, a slightly slower pace, a very authentic engagement, right? But the McNeil-Lair part, OPB, PBS NewsHour part is like, but we're not, we're going to keep thinking. We might, bring it down to the baseline, but we're talking about important things, which is namely the future and the kids.
We're trying to come up with a better way to make this ad hoc teaching work.
Exactly.
Because many times you have no clue who you're going to be talking to, what they're going to be like. And if there's even lesson plans there.
There's so many variables that occur. It is so incredible, what I've experienced the last 4 years basically doing this in these local rural school districts. It's really quite amazing. When all I wanted to do originally was give back a little bit and work a little bit, in my local area a little bit. That's all I wanted to do.
And you never knew what you were
I
going to
never knew
face.
all this stuff that I would encounter and experience, so much of which I don't want to go in today, but as we look each other, you know what I'm talking about because I've shared most of these things.
No, you never know until you get into the classroom.
You know, malfeasance and abuse by adults, at least professionally, by children, students, just abhorrent behavior. And then at the same time, the exact opposite occurs.
No, it is a love-hate experience.
It is. It really is. And so then what most of us, I think, probably do, at least according to the people, the subs I meet out there in the field, is that they go to the area and the space and the place of what? Least resistance. The easiest, you know, to be blunt about it. And when we say easiest in this context, there's really only one thing we're talking about, is that the kids are nice and respectful. That's all, right? Wouldn't you agree? That, I mean, and then we can actually do what we've been trained to do, to teach and to share and to inspire. That's what I think I try to do anyways. And that's where I think our value is, particularly for me out here when I am a bit of an anomaly out here.
So you don't fit in, right?
I don't fit in that much. I'm a little bit different. My professional experience, the fact that I've lived so much of my life in big cities, all of these nuanced things make me an anomaly in this territory. And I feel and have felt historically that makes me a piece of equity, you know, for these people. And
well, the kids have a good time and they have a different person to relate to. And
exactly.
They have a great experience.
Because curiosity.
And
it's all about curiosity. I just visited a 3-week-old baby. Beautiful. And, you know, it brings it all back. It's all about the curiosity. Well, some of it's about the baseline need, I suppose, at 3 weeks old. I mean, because you're crying because you don't know what the heck's going on and you need something. But very soon thereafter, these large, fat, powerful, supposedly human brains are dictated by curiosity. How can I walk like all those people I see walking around me?
Why?
How can I get my thumb in my mouth because I don't possess that other thing that I'd really like to possess, but to satisfy, whatever, and it's all about curiosity, and that's how we learn. And what I hate about what I see in terms of malfeasance in the system right now is all that does not nurture the curiosity, the programmed nature of things that are so rigid in many cases. So, let me go this direction if I may, because again, this is all going to be linear in time, how this works,
Okay.
So I want to just go into a real personal kind of orientation to the conversation, and because it'll be real and authentic in you reminding me a lot of things about you that I may or may not know. So you started out as a teacher. You went to college in the 70s and got your...
Right. I am a Tulane graduate.
A Tulane graduate from New Orleans.
New Orleans.
As a teacher?
No, I went as an artist.
As an artist. With an emphasis on what?
Sculpture.
Oh, phenomenal.
And then
I didn't know that.
I went to the University of Oregon, which at the time had the second best program in the whole U.S.
And you were in your 20s doing that?
Yes, I was in my 20s.
And so that was your postgraduate, you were going to go?
I was a postgraduate. I was going to get my teaching license.
Keep talking.
And then
Why did you pick Oregon?
Because my family had moved here.
Okay. And where had you grown up?
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East? Oh, because your dad was an ambassador or something like that?
No, he was a geologist.
A geologist, an academic.
He was a micropaleontologist.
And he was discovering things about human history?
No. He worked in the oil industry.
Dinosaurs. Oh.
No, we're talking foraminifera.
Ancient forest converted to oil.
Little tiny one-cell animals that that decompose and make gasoline.
Yeah. Okay. Make oil that
Right.
gets converted.
And you have to
So he
look
was
at
working
these,
for oil companies.
right.
And so did you go to international schools? Well, how did you get educated in those years?
Yeah, I went to international schools.
Nice. And how, you spent literally most of your childhood in the Middle
My
East?
whole life. Nope, I was born in South America, in Colombia.
Colombia.
Bogotá.
And then when did you move to the Middle East?
In 1966.
How old were you?
I was 13.
I was 3. So, okay. And you spent 10 years there?
Well, I lived in Europe because there were no schools where I lived.
So when you were like 13 or 14, they let you go away and go to school.
Go to boarding
schools.
schools.
And then the family moved back to, is that also the
no,
Louisiana connection
no,
to the
no,
Gulf
no.
and the
I
oil?
went to Tulane because I went to college. I never had lived in the U.S. until I was 17 years old.
That is phenomenal, Les. And I kind of knew a little bit of that, but I didn't know all of that.
Nope, I had culture shock when I moved to the U.S.
Wow.
Because I had never lived in the U.S.
That's why you're so savvy. That's why we've communicated so well from day one.
I had never lived in the U.S.
Because we have such diverse human experience, not limited human experience, but very broad human experience. That's very broad human experience.
And then my father's best friend taught geology at the University of Oregon.
And so you knew someone when you came.
So when we moved here, he wanted to be with his deep sea fishing buddy because they could go fishing.
Was that in your dad? Did your dad retire at that point? Okay. And so you got your Oregon full-fledged teaching credential
from the university
through that program.
Go Ducks.
And
Go Ducks.
And then did you start teaching right after that?
No, I worked in law enforcement.
Oh, right after that?
Right after that.
Why? How did that happen?
Because it just happened.
There was a job available.
There was a job available, and
seemed interesting.
And everyone said, "Oh, you did your student teaching at one of the hardest schools in Springfield, Oregon."
Okay.
Where everybody in my class had felonies.
So then they said, so you might as well go work for the police or the sheriff. Was it the sheriff?
I worked for this police.
In
Little Cottage Grove, Oregon.
Oh my goodness! Did we talk about this before? When I was a kid, my dad's second wife, her brother lived in Drain.
Oh, he lived in
and
Drain.
So we flew up in my dad's little plane at least once when I was very young, like maybe 10 or something, 11, 12, and landed in Cottage Grove so they could pick us up at the airport and take us back to their house in Drain, Oregon.
Isn't it? Yep, I used to substitute teach in Drain.
So, that's another interesting little correlation for us, too, because obviously that planted a seed in me at a very early age about Oregon, and you know what it was? It's green and beautiful.
It's green and beautiful.
And the water, because I grew up in Southern California. The desert, like the Middle East.
I grew up
like
in the desert, and the trees were beautiful.
Yeah,
everything.
Life affirming.
Except that you can't go swimming in the ocean.
Right, like you can in Santa Monica or Honolulu.
And the first time I went to the ocean,
or in Palestine or Saudi Arabia or something.
You cannot go swimming in the ocean in Oregon.
Yeah, it's a little chilly unless you have a wetsuit.
Unless you have a wetsuit
or a dry suit. But so then you worked with the police.
I did work with the police.
For how long? A while?
A while. And
10 years?
Yeah, something like that.
And you got married?
No.
You didn't get married yet?
I was married before that, before I worked with the police.
Okay. And then you did the policing thing. And then when did you actually teach your first time professionally as a
right after
for a job?
I worked for a while off and on. I worked for the police and I substitute taught.
Okay. So from the beginning, with your full-fledged teaching credential in Oregon, you really began mostly as a sub.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. Starting back in when? 1970 something?
No, 1982.
1982. Okay. Beautiful. And
yeah, I've worked lots. I worked as a recycling coordinator and I worked as in law enforcement. So, And I
then
subbed
teaching.
occasionally and would pick up a sub job here and there all
And
the
did
time.
you ever do a stint of years as a full-time, full-fledged organ teacher?
No, because the art programs, one of the things as an art teacher you learn very quickly is that they have very few art programs.
Right.
And in the
They're minimized,
they're minimized.
particularly in these little rural districts.
And in the 70s and the 80s, the first jobs to be laid off were the art teachers.
Sadly, when now all the science at the highest level of institutions like Stanford and Harvard and their education departments, in conjunction with their scientific, medical, bioscience people, have affirmed and confirmed that there's nothing, and I mean nothing, better for our human brains than, for example, music.
And the arts.
And the arts is what I was,
Vincent Lanier, who was a professor of art education at the University of Oregon, used to rail about the NEA and the artists in the school program, because what schools were doing is that they were laying off their art teachers and relying on these artists in the school residencies for a week or two, and that they would come in and do a project and leave. So instead of having an art program where students would learn about design, composition, and the elements of design experience, painting, sculpture, ceramics, they would have a 2-week stint doing one art project.
Sad. Obviously, you and I have a lot in common on that.
And so Vincent Lanier, bless his heart, was very upset about the state of art education in Oregon, because they were basically phasing out the art teachers and basically coming up with these artists in the school programs, very short residencies, and they were often hiring people who were not trained educators.
So to be fair, and I know our fellow board members and others all over the world would want us to try to be fair, I think it is better now, right? I think that might have been a really low point back when you're talking about that 2-week internship. It's better, but it's only marginally better.
Well, there's been an
a little bit more.
understanding
It's a little bit more regular. There is some music, there is some art. Of course, I go back to the 70s at the Los Angeles Unified School District, where you not only had, band, choir, orchestra, beginning band, beginning orchestra, and all of these different things, and art, and ceramics, and metal shop, and wood shop, and graphic arts shop, and electric shop, and plastic shop, all these different things for all the different kids and all of the different families and all of the different ways they learn, which led to the space program, in nuclear fission and fusion. And yet, for some reason, we think it's a good idea that we homogenize and narrow the scope of what we use and do to nurture young, modern, so-called creative human beings.
No, you take away their metal shop program, their ability to make things, fix cars.
I think it's a travesty. It's why I got back into it, to try to just do a little bit of inspiration along for some of those brains, for some of those kids and babies' brains that need a different angle, to come to A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
And music, without
all
music.
that stuff, Well, without music, I mean, really. I'm going to do some podcasts on just that at some point, because the research has become very, significant at this point, and it's born out of biology, anthropology, everything, all of the sociology. I have a crazy idea that I'll just mention here, so that those that have the tendency to want to judge me and write me off for the rest of time can do so quickly now. But I've had a little fantasy the last month or two that it would have been really great had we, as a species, come up with a currency in society that was music instead of money.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that have been great?
That would have been.
I think
you
that would have
can
been a
sing
rising
your
to
way
our
up.
higher versions of our higher selves and our potential. Not that we haven't done some of that. We
So
have.
you can't sing for your supper anymore, right?
Yeah.
You would-
What it exactly looks like, would have looked like, I haven't completely worked out in my mind's eye, but I like it as a working model of an aspirational vision to nurture my own soul in the process of doing all that I do. And so that's where that comes from. And I don't think it would be impossible. I don't think it would have been impossible, because I think a lot of ancient cultures and societies and tribal life historically was quite and most plausibly
about music and art.
and
And-
spiritual
and
connection,
making
communion, sharing, social, all of that wrapped in a pretty thing that wasn't about, oh, I think I can take advantage of you, bang you on your head, Fred Flintstone, and grab your Barney Rubble, whatever, and you know what I'm saying? No, I mean, cute, but no, it didn't have to go this way, but it did. So there, if I revealed myself to some of you in such of a way that is abhorrent, please take your adieu. And this is my space, and it is my channel. And Leslie is my friend and my collaborator in the Substitute Teacher Association. And all I really care about is the propagation and stimulation of good ideas.
And we just want to have a good day with students.
Exactly. And we just want to have every day
Every
be
day
a
be
good
a good
day
day.
with students. Yes, because then I wouldn't be as tired at the end of the day if that was the case. And then I could in my case alone, I could continue to do all this other attempted
And you wouldn't have to
good
take
work.
a nap at the end of the day.
Right. Or go to bed at 7 so that I can get up at 4 so I can get a little me time to take care of some of my other business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I got sick a lot this last year, in the last 6 months of this last school year, because I overextended myself. And self-care is number one, folks, but intelligent self-care and empathetic self-care is what we're talking about. So we exist in a very nuanced reality, particularly as Oregon substitutes, because there is no union per se, because there are no state-mandated protections, even in the organizational dynamics, the administration thereof. I know I've said this in our meetings before, but because I work in 2 districts directly and 4 districts indirectly through an out-of-state sub-service provider, for-profit business, there's a whole lot of administration I have to do just to maintain, my current
Just to keep legal.
yeah, with my license, with my mandated safe schools training. What is that about? Why do we have to do that every year? Bloodborne pathogens, sexual abuse, and all these things. It's like, if we're so-called intelligent, college-educated people, I mean, maybe a review once every 3 years or something. And then to say nothing of the malfeasance we discovered in the money going out, because there isn't a state offices of substitutes, so districts have been mandated to pay us for that safe schools training that's annual. But in my case, theoretically, I could take that training 3 times to satisfy all my districts and get paid all 3 times.
No, we asked.
And
to
that
have
isn't
it
my
all-
preference.
We asked to have it all being centralized.
Yeah, but it hasn't.
But they don't want to do it.
It's difficult to get the state to implement positive change in even just the basic administration thereof. And so my idea was, if we started talking regularly and sharing this to bigger and bigger audiences, yes, nationally, but mostly in Oregon, that maybe we could, as was it Gus Fredrickson,
Yep.
who suggested to us at a lobby day in Salem, a year ago?
About a year ago, yes.
That if we wanted to really gain potency as an association of professionals in the state, then we should try to impact the general populace of the state, the general population of the state, with some of our ideas, such that that would get the attention of the legislators.
When I first started teaching, I never had to take training.
Because you had gotten
because I
it
got
all
my
in
college degree
and
I had my teaching
and
license.
so and you still have that license, right?
I still have that teaching license.
And they still want you to take the annual training?
And I still have to take the annual training.
Yeah, it's just
the
wacky.
Same thing. And I worked in law enforcement, and I've seen people come and go with these charges. And I've gone to jury duty, and I've even seen...
Do you think it has to do with the limited imagination and purview of certain middle and upper level administrators? In other words, everybody seems to just be very much protecting their own little siloed
Well, I think
territories.
that they want people to stop this behavior. And these trainings have been going on since about 2003.
Right, but there's no oversight.
There's no oversight.
They just do the mandatory training on us once a year,
and
3 or 4 times.
Say, do not
pay
do
us
this.
for it.
Well, they used to not pay us for it. Recently,
because of OSTA, because of you, because of Debbie, because of Sally Sue.
We said, hey,
Phyllis.
They're requiring us to take a whole day of our life and take these trainings.
Right. So,
and before we can teach or look at jobs.
And as if that's going to fix the problem completely in the first place, right? No, I don't think so. You need to... The other thing, not only has it been proven that music and art is number one for human brains, but relationship is number one for human brains. And trust. For kids, students.
Right, and so some of the people that do these things, which is why they make us take the training, have betrayed the trust.
Well, I was going to make the point, exactly, and I was going to make the point that the sub-service providers, out-of-state, so-called our employers, if we work for them, do a disservice to that point of connectivity. I serve all these small districts. It's intimate in the first place. In a town of 3,500 or a town of 10,000.
If you have a problem, you can't call the out-of-state company. Hey, I have no lesson plan.
Yeah.
What do I do?
Or can you intercede for me with this issue or that issue, whatever it is, because they're not present. They're not here.
There's no...
And in many ways, I think many administrators have done that because out of a perception on their part, and this is societal-wide, that the software and the help, so-called help, which is the sales pitch that these sub-service provider, for-profit providers provide, is going to somehow make these administrators' lives easier. When, in fact, I would submit my experience alone, let alone yours or Sally Sue's or anybody's, proves that that's not the truth. That's not the truth. That's not the truth at all. I could illustrate it just within the microcosm that is my reality.
Well, John,
right?
When I first started teaching in the 80s, there was a little book, and they would have lesson plans filled out 2 weeks ahead of time. So when you walked into the classroom, you could look for the book.
You knew where you were.
And you knew where you were.
Wow.
And so, and
it was contextualized,
They were required to have 2 weeks in advance. When I walk into a classroom today, I ask the secretary for the lesson plans. They either will have them downloaded from the teacher at home who's sick.
Print it out.
And they'll print them out, or they will be in the classroom.
Or in the notebook, yeah.
In a notebook.
Or on the desk.
And some of the lesson plans, some of the teachers have the same program that they do every time they're off.
Well, I would say there's about 5 or 6 different versions.
And they have the same movie that they've shown every time they
Some of them want us to be babysitters and don't, some of them want that. And then generally that's a very short lesson plan, might include a movie.
With the movie.
Some of them are very much the opposite. 2 or 3 pages long, give you all kinds of notes on specific students, insight, as though we're real adult people.
And so when you're there,
professional
you're
adult
like,
people.
okay, this
wow.
And some of them are even better. They'll give you a host.
Which is why I love getting there half an hour early or
You
or
have a
so.
host who will tell you who is where they're supposed to be sitting. So if they decide to change
Oh, the
names
seating
on you,
chart. Seating
and a
chart.
seating chart. This is
Huge.
wonderful.
Of course, all of this varies per grades. I have tended, because as you know me now, I like variety. So I've done K through 12 every year. I do, I don't like to make blanket statements about it. It really depends on the kids and the class. But you've been doing this last year? You did a long-term position as a full-time sub
As a Spanish teacher
as a Spanish teacher for one solid year.
for one solid year.
See, that would kill me. I don't
It
think
is
I
a
could
lot
do.
of work.
I mean, it would just kill me because of but because of the monotony, because of it's not stimulating enough for me to do that, quite frankly.
Really?
And given the way that I have worked my whole life as a freelancer, it just doesn't fit into my whole mentality, which is fine, which is good. I mean, they need people like me who are willing to go do a lot of different things, particularly out here. But we've talked about another issue that this dovetails to, which is the one that let's review for myself and for everybody else out there in the universe of the World Wide Web, so-called universe of World Wide Web. I'm very skeptical, but I'm participating. There's three kinds of substitute teaching licenses, or is there two? I have the restricted license that was allotted to me because of my college degree and a certain amount of online training and orientation.
Well, the restricted license has got to be sponsored by a school district, and hopefully the school district
From their need.
knows people in the community that they feel would be a good fit in their school. Once you get sponsored by a school district, you can work in any school district
With that license. And the only limitations are, I think, the main limitation is that I'm not allowed, supposedly, or qualified, supposedly, to do more than a 10-day term in one position.
Right, because when you are a teacher there for long term, they're looking for somebody that's had teacher training, curriculum
And what
writing.
license is that called? Classified? Certified?
That is a basic certification.
Basic certification. And is that the same certification that a full-time teacher has?
It is the same
So that's when you go ahead and get another year or two of college and get the teacher education degree.
There's usually a prescribed program of teacher training, which is teaching you teacher strategies, so you learn a little bit about what types of teaching methods to use.
Classroom management.
There is a classroom management piece, so you learn different
student teaching
strategies. You have internships, you have educational media, and you have test design.
Now, as I've told you many times before, I felt like, again, I don't do long-term jobs. I'm not interested. But let's say I was someone who was interested. Given the fact that I started teaching in my 20s, just not as a fully licensed, sanctioned teacher. I started teaching originally at Portland Community Colleges, night courses in my late 20s. And then I taught in private schools, art, printing, all kinds of things, quite frankly. And then community centers, and then professional organizations. And then I even did workshops, at Malala High School. So, I mean, I had a lot of my own on-the-job training as a teacher, and I've always thought that should be quantifiable and worth something, and that within the system that you could get somehow credit and move up the so-called ladder of certification in Oregon. So I know that's something else we've talked about. It doesn't currently exist. I could do it, obviously, if I went back to college.
Right. Well, up until the 1930s, this was how teachers became teachers.
Right.
They were not required to go to college. One of the implements of scientific education was to provide student teaching and student training
On the job.
Some of them
mentorship.
They were on the job, but they were also what they call labs, where people would go in and they would work with a trained person who knew
Right.
how to implement scientific teaching.
Right.
And this is how teachers are trained currently.
100 years ago. Well, in the programs, you're
In
saying.
the programs.
Right,
Because
right.
before, teachers would often
Right.
basically go into the classroom, and if they made it, great. And if they didn't make it,
Yeah.
they didn't make
Yeah,
it.
they quit.
They quit.
They went and worked for the phone company.
They worked for the
Or
phone company.
Something like that. But of course, now we're talking about history. I mean, 1930s, that was my grandparents' generation, you know, and that was quite a different world then that we live in. I think we should speak to that, another gentle, interesting segue. And you can relax.
Relax.
Is this, well, let's just go there real quickly, and then we'll wrap this up. But this, folks, this so-called tool, I would call it historically, we would hope that this would be considered a tool. But sadly, what did they put in this tool? Entertainment.
Entertainment, and they're blue light addicts. They found that the blue light is very addictive.
Well, forgive me, but I've had a pet peeve with the way humanity, the last 125 years, has just signed up for all these new technologies so quickly without really thinking about it, taking our time, sniffing it, touching it, checking, you know, like we would have done over thousands of years. We would have been prudent, right? But no, we became unprudent in the last 135 years with the advent of what? Fossil fuel, asphalt, concrete, and now our babies' brains. This is a two-dimensional, small field of reality, and we're encouraging them to use two thumbs. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to preach, but what designed us was thousands of years of an intimate relationship with four dimensions. That's what led to our 8 fingers, 2 opposing thumbs, our big, fat, creative brains, etc., etc. And now, Les, I love you because you're providing the illustration for, and so she and I have seen, just even this last year, wouldn't you say? Every year it's becoming a slightly more inculcated part of the reality that we have to deal with, and we know this. It's in the news. It's on the TV. That's the governments, the legislators, nationally, statewide. Everybody's talking about it. But has anybody just come down and said, "Hey, guess what? We're leaving the phones at home or at the front door or wherever you're leaving them for now, until maybe I mean at least until they're 16." That's what
Every school starts with a no cell phone rule.
They kind of do.
And you're literally wait to see when the rule will fall apart.
Well, again, it's not statewide, so that doesn't make it easy for substitutes, and it doesn't make it clear for students. Then it's district implemented wide, but then what we find is on the ground, every school could have a different version of the guidelines and rules, and then every teacher has their own relationship to those rules. Makes it exceedingly difficult for us, and I would contend the wrong move for our children. I'm always trying to think about the end user, the final constituent, the number one client. That's the kid.
Well, when I taught, I would basically use the cell phone because we do warm-ups, and we have look this person up.
In Spanish?
Yes.
And so you would encourage them to use the phone as a tool.
Well, they use the phone as a tool.
And yeah, well, and yeah.
And they play Kahoots and they play these online games and they're using their phone. So and the internet is much faster on the phone. So if you have them looking up information, they have faster access with their 5G phones.
So difficult, and we really haven't, we really don't know yet what the best way to approach it would be. And so it's another real difficult dynamic of modern cultural and human evolution that's going on with this particular piece of technology, but it also implicates and impacts us, I would say, pretty significantly. Maybe, I don't know, I don't know that I would necessarily call it the number one thing that we have to deal with, but it's up there as a chronic thing
It's a
that we
very
have to
chronic
think
problem.
about. We got to check it. Often we might have to figure it out with the students, just a conversation with students, which can work with some classes well, but other classes not so well. And with the little kids, of course, you know, I pray that parents don't put the phones in the hands of the little kids until they're at least in, you know, out of elementary school. For crying out
They start
loud,
in
you know.
third grade.
I know. I've seen them everywhere. I've seen it in babies' hands at the grocery store, and I just want to tell those parents, please don't do that. They can watch TV when you allow that, but don't put the TV in their hands for 24/7. It's a satiation, convenience, comfort, and cash driven. That's all it's about.
And the kids are so addicted to
And
their
they
phones.
become so addicted. By high school, then you see them. But then, of course, in high school, if they seem to be well behaved and doing their work, you might not buck it so much. And some of them might, in fact, and are, in fact, using it as a tool for their work. And some of them aren't. I think you remember the one, this was a middle school last year, where the young gal brought out her phone and put it on her little desk like that in front of her. And then these two little, it took me a minute, I had never seen them before. And so I learned something too, you know, these two little miniature controllers, like old joysticks.
Oh, yes.
Little tiny,
yes.
and she's just going to sit there at the beginning of the class and start playing computer games on her phone. I could not believe the audacity and the sheer waste of time that she was
Oh,
on.
yeah. No, they are addicted to their phones.
So
it's an ongoing battle.
I just kept talking about what a bad decision it was. I didn't, and then within 5 minutes, she did put it away. I didn't yell at her. I didn't come down on her too hard. I just started saying, you know what? All those things about that's not what designed us. What designed us was the intimate relationship with that physical world outside, and the fact that there were things that could eat us, and there were things that we needed to find to eat. I mean, a very simple format that led to...
Nope, these are blue light addicts.
Blue light addicts.
Blue light addicts, divined by the mafia to basically encourage gambling.
There's another theory you'll get only here at the Mount Angel Theater Studio with my friends. That's right. I like that one. Well, let's do a podcast about that someday. We won't do that in our official capacity as the board president and vice president of OSTA. We'll just be two friends talking about, you think that this was what happened? You know, the conspiracy theory.
Nope. And so when you go to a casino and you see people sitting there for hours on their video poker machines.
Oh my God!
And then you go into the classroom and you see kids.
Oh well, yeah, right.
You see the same thing.
It's just like the homogenized sheep group of humanity. It reminds me of the Matrix, quite frankly.
And you're just like looking at the kids, going, "Which one of you is going?"
So just stay home and plug yourself in. Just stay home and plug yourself in and boot up. You know. Become part of the cloud and the web if that's what you want, you know? That's not what I'm here for, and that's not what I'm propagating, and that's not what I'm gifting and giving,
and
you know?
These are your students of the cloud.
Yeah, the students of the cloud. Oh, that could be a podcast. It could be an album. It could be a book. You want it? You gift it to me? Huh?
You want the students of the cloud.
Students of the cloud. Children of the cloud. You remember Chuck Mangioni's Children of Sanchez?
Uh-huh. Well, we have the children of the cloud here now. And as a substitute teacher, you see it all over the place.
It's the other thing I've always appreciated you for, by the way, Les, is your sense of humor. I don't think we could do what we do if we didn't have a sense of humor.
Everywhere you go, you see students of the cloud, and principals will go, well, how come you have the lights on? It's like, I need to keep an eye on these blue light addicts.
My goodness, that's a whole... I can't tell you. You know, of course, I'm a globally published photographer. I've used my eyes intensely since I was a teenager doing that. That's 50 years now. And I know I'm losing my sight. I just know it. I can tell, and that's why I have all these glasses everywhere. And And so when I go into these classrooms, often it's in elementary schools, I have to say, but it can be any grade, any school. And they've got this whole new vibe. It's like they're trying to create a vibe, and it's generated first and foremost by low light
Low light.
or no light.
Or no.
They don't have the lights on.
I don't teach with lights on. And guess what? The kids are calmer.
I don't know. I don't know if I support it.
They are calmer. And if you want to stop a fight.
Well, maybe it's something we can make them earn. If you want the low light, then let me have the light on and let me have your attention so I can effectively and efficiently take roll call, because my roll call ability requires light. I could bring my intensive flash, bring the mining light over my forehead and say, well, this is in case you guys need the low light.
Well, aren't you on the computer or are you on a piece of paper?
I'm not always on the computer.
Well, if you have a piece of paper, you need the light.
You understand, all of the districts, they all have a different relationship to that computer for the sub thing. Valor's pretty good. If you ask them, I shouldn't have mentioned Valor, but I'm not saying anything about Valor other than that they're pretty good about having a substitute laptop if you need it to go on to Power School to take the role and everything. And I'm very adept at doing that if it's a district that does that or a school that does that. But not every school and not every district does that. A lot of schools will
give you a piece
They
of paper.
give you a piece of paper or 6 pieces of paper or whatever it is, And so you have to be vassal. And in my case, it means I need all these glasses. So because you never know how many kids are in the class, how small the type's going to be, et cetera, et cetera. A couple times I wished I had brought a magnifying glass. So everybody has a reality that they're existing in, and I would say substitutes are one of the most high-level improvisational dynamics.
Yep,
of any employment that aside from the creative arts that I've done and that I do, being the substitute requires just the highest level of improvisation and adaptability that you could possibly imagine.
It's like playing charades.
Yeah.
You get a piece of paper and you look at it and
you got to make something out of it.
You've got to make something happen.
Communicate something, and it's incredible.
And so if you don't have that piece of paper, you're just like, okay.
So I think I don't know, and this is what I like. I don't know how long we've been doing this so far, but I know we've been at it close to an hour, if not an hour, close to an hour, maybe.
Aren't you keeping track?
No, I've lost track, and I like that. And it's good because it allows all of my brains to keep working. And so the last thing I wanted to cover for today is this. How long have you been president of OSTA?
I have done it since 2020.
Like you became president before COVID took over?
Right. I became president.
Oh, my goodness.
And then I had the challenge of having to learn Zoom.
Oh, my God. And didn't we all? But, to keep the organization viable. And by the time I showed up about a year and a half later, because I think I showed up, maybe it was even 2 years later in 2022, beginning of 2022, I think is when I originally reached out to you guys. The OSTA membership was really low for multiple reasons, I think, because the reality for everybody in the world had changed, number one. For number two, in Oregon particularly, and this may or may not be true in the rest of the country, and traditionally, a major percentage of subs have been retired teachers. And most of those people, or a big chunk of those people with COVID said, I'm 65 plus, I've been there, I've done that. No, I'm not going to take the risk. I'm done. And they got out of the profession all the way together. So that's why OSTA, I believe, this was told to me too, was in such a small membership state of being when I connected with you all almost 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago. And so it's one of the reasons I've made it my mandate, personally as the vice president and as someone who has my work background, to help build the membership, which I believe now we have it up to 150 plus. But we've decided that there's at least 5,000 subs in the state, right? Maybe closer to 7,000 or 8,000. We're not completely sure. So we need to grow this membership, not only because our membership is re-emerging and regrouping after COVID, but because our leadership has been doing this and volunteering way too long. And even I now have been at it for a year. And given all of the things that I do outside of teaching and everything else, I'm not going to be able to dedicate 50 years. I'm not even going to live that long, to the organization. So I love all you guys and all the hard work you've put in, really intelligent, hard, mindful work that Phyllis and you and Sally Sue and Vaughn and Kimberly and Debbie and others, I know I'm leaving some out, have put in, and I want to substantiate it and make sure that it lasts. Because it's because of the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association that there is even a National Substitute Teacher Association. But it hasn't spread and been nurtured and supported as much as it should be and can. And we are on good authority to understand that through the research that all students will spend on average 10% of their K through 12 schooling with substitutes. So the fact that we've made this our mission, both as subs, but also as board members of the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association, is born out of that fact that we feel like, the better we can improve the circumstances and the quality of substitutes, the better it will be for the constituency of students in the public schools moving forward. And where do you think all the substitutes come from? Public schools, private schools, et cetera, et cetera. If they have any training or any insight, it's from the public schools.
Most come from the public schools. And we've always had a fall conference where we provide training, and we think about it through the year and look at what kind of gaps do we have where we can help provide training, because as a substitute teacher, you will find yourself needing skills and not getting the training that regular teachers do.
Thank you so much for complimenting my existence today. We will have our annual conference on October 11th, Friday, at Chemeketa Community College this year on the east side of Salem. It'll be our second year at that location.
Right, we're going to be doing a hybrid conference because people like to get together in person.
And I would have been malfeasant not to cover this, so you did a great co-hosting job. You see what I'm saying? And so I want to give ourselves positive, because this is a creative endeavor that you and we're inventing something together right now, Leslie, And so we have, I have Jim Gilbert and his historic film, about land use and land use planning, which is really good in Oregon, called An Oregon Story. I fairly well confirmed him, I believe, to make a presentation. He'll be one of our presenters, and one of the dynamics of that presentation will be how he and his co-producer have pursued creating a curriculum based on that subject that they've worked intensely on, to attempt to get it in schools. So that I think that'll be really good for us to have.
No, it's good to have tools so that when you go into the school.
And insight.
So you can basically bring information to the students so they can have an enriching day rather than basically a boring day with a horrible lesson plan.
Yeah, waste of time. I feel so bad for the kids when I feel like I was a babysitter.
And the kids hate this. And many of them feel absolutely ripped off, and then they go back to the phone because it's the only way they can get through that hour that they have to sit with you with
the number one addiction for sure. Yeah,
the terrible lesson plan.
And who was it? We haven't totally solidified our second presenter.
No, we're trying to get a legislator.
We may get a legislator or a researcher. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. So we're all volunteers, and so I'm maximizing that time right now to keep our agendas moving forward.
She would love to present. Call us.
Oh yeah, if you'd like to, if you have something worthy to present, let us know. But more importantly, if you're a substitute or you know a substitute teacher anywhere in the country, please alert them.
And send us a message at ostasubs
And-
at hotmail.com.
And this website,
ostasubs@hotmail.com.
and this website where they can find that email address is ostasubs.org.
That's right.
And it's ostasubs.org. And if you email or call any of the numbers on our website, you'll get in touch with us. And most importantly, though, if you're a sub or you know a sub in the state of Oregon,
Let them know about OSTA.
please let them know about the organization and that our annual meeting is fast approaching this October 11th in about, what would that be? 4, 5.5, 6 weeks.
6 weeks away.
6.5 weeks away. Personally, I'm trying to get through the next 2 weeks for the Mount Angel Oktoberfest 2024 with my rather robust programming of Oregon arts and artists. And as soon as that's done, then I will focus manically on the annual OSTA meeting to try to help and make that as successful as we can. We had about 50 in physical attendance last year.
And about 50 virtual.
50, 60, 70, I think, at various points in time. It would be nice if we could double those numbers this year.
So we're basically out here.
We're
and
here.
We're here to serve.
We're here to help. We're here to hook you up with people or resources that you might need. But also, and most importantly, and this goes to everything we've talked about, nurturing the community of support, because that's it. We don't, the governor, I don't know how much she's looking out. God bless her. She did set up a task force, but I don't know how much she is really looking out for us, and anybody else. We have to nurture this ourselves. We have to take care of it, and we've got to get this association a little bit more robust, a little bit more membership, so we can get some new leadership moving in and sustain this organization that's had such an illustrious history, really, for 50
it's impressive. They
for 50 years.
Basically, we are the only state in the nation that has a minimum salary schedule for substitute teachers.
And that was born out of the efforts of OSTA.
That is
namely our fearless leader, Phyllis Kirkwood. And I so respect her for this extraordinarily long-term commitment that she has undertaken in her life. It is admirable.
And she is a George Fox grad.
Is that right?
And so I've been advocating for her to have a special research section set up at George Fox because of the innovative and visionary work that she has done for the state of Oregon.
I love that idea. And you know that young Juan Olasalan, who will perform here on the Saturday, the 14th of September for the 2024 Oktoberfest programming at the Mount Angel Theater Studio, Matt's, is attending George Fox University as a music major. And I'm not sure if he's just going in his second year. He just started his second year. He plays Rachmaninoff and Chopin and everything, and became a wonderful friend and supporter of this little theater the last 2 years. And I know the family well. I sub for his father in Woodburn. Again, I'm trying to minimize, actual.
So is he a music teacher?
No, 4th grade, 5th grade, his dad. But Juan is just the most wonderful student and talented pianist, classical pianist. And I hear all the reports I get, since I don't see him anymore because he's in college, from his dad and others are all exceedingly positive, like he's just really blossoming. Well, he's a musician, and he's in college, and he's had a lot of love and nurturing. So that is not necessarily a surprise. But what I want to say about what you just said is, because of that deep connection I have now to George Fox, that's his piano. That's the piano he grew up on. He and his dad gifted it to the theater after getting connected with me in this effort, when I gave them one week a lead on a piano sale that led to them buying a very excellent grand
Oh, they got a
piano
grand
for the house
piano with good tone.
for a really good price. And they gifted me that piano for my little theater, which I was so grateful for. But I think that therefore, and I've been to George Fox now once in the last 4 or 5 months for a concert of wands there. So now I've been there and I know it, and I've always been aware of it, but now I'm more aware of it. And now you're telling me about that idea with Phyllis. I think that's spectacular. I think you and I should make that happen. And I think that's something that I could help make happen. Just reaching out to people and saying, hey, and then we can get more press and more exposure for OSTA through that. And I know Phyllis would support that. So in effect, that's a win-win-win-win-win for everybody, including you're saying do they still have a teacher training program there?
They have a very prestigious teacher training
Which
program.
is like a master's degree,
they
right?
They have an MAT, Masters of Teaching Art.
So so these are the types of things that we do. We process, we share information, we try to elevate the position for ourselves, for the state, but ultimately for the students, folks, because that's just what students need, are intelligent people around them.
Because the skills that you need for substitute teaching are very different from regular classroom teaching.
Right.
Because you have to go in and read your classroom in less than a minute.
Oh, the socio-emotional intelligence.
You have to know who will give you a problem and who will be your friend.
I feel so bad on those national substitute Facebook pages when I see a young substitute lament something because they just don't know.
They're just thrown into it.
They're just like thrown to they feel, I empathize with them because I know they're being thrown to the wolves. But I also know that it's their lack of experience in life or training or education or social interact, all of it.
Well, you have to have confidence. And when you walk into a room of students that are sizing you up and looking for every
Particularly,
weakness,
we can admit it, we can be this broad. Maybe we might be referencing middle schoolers the most.
Well, middle schoolers
it does tend to be.
They will give you the most challenges. If you can survive middle schoolers, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th,
8th.
And sometimes 8th.
Oh, yeah.
But just those grades, if you can survive,
that can be the toughest.
You will basically have skills for life. You can talk to any audience after that.
That's exactly right.
Nobody will ever scare
One of the reasons I felt qualified to do this. I mean, if I hadn't felt qualified in my life up to the time I became an Oregon-sanctioned, approved, licensed sub, man, the last 3 or 4 years of going to all of these different
schools,
funky little rural districts,
Shark Tank
has definitely edified me that much more, and enlightened me too, as to why I think we need to model friendly, intelligent, authentic conversations. So that's really what this was all about, and I so appreciate you coming today to be my guest.
Oh, well, thank you, John,
and my friend. And my my fellow board member on the Oregon Substitute Teacher Association. I
thank you all for being here.
And thank you all for watching now and later. And please don't forget to like, thumbs up, and subscribe. We are in a very humble rural community trying to create something out of very little. And we're trying to bridge that gap of the big capitalist machine that's trying to make mint off of the addiction to the flat screen for the future generations. And that which born us, the physical, real world of physics and biology. Yeah, that's what they do. That's what we do. We all do it, you know. But I've referenced it many times in middle schools and high schools. Like, look, like a hammer. If you need to drive a nail, okay, pick up the hammer and use it. If you need to call your grandma and say, I'm going to be late, go ahead. Send the text. If you need to use the map, go ahead. Okay. Use the map, you know. But otherwise, it's an incessant, addictive, environmental, entertainment, satiation orientation, which is not good for our children. And that's why she's doing that. and it's just driving me friggin' crazy. But
What?
I love you for it
What?
because you're modeling and acting out that addictive dynamic that we come across daily as substitutes in 2024 and 25. So phenomenal. Thank you, everybody. Subscribe, like, share. Get all the substitutes
Don't forget.
in Oregon and beyond to come to these live streams and others. And come on down and be a guest. We just wanted to start doing some of this stuff from the grassroots up. Appreciate you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay tuned. Next week, I have one guest scheduled already. It's my friend Honey, retail honey business around the block. And her husband's a beekeeper, and she sells honey. I can't even remember the name of the company right now. I'm so sorry, but I'll be promoting it next week. But we're going to learn about the honeys and the making of the honey and all that stuff.
And more honey.
And you got to love it. Well, and you're not going to get any honey out of this. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. It is Friday, August 30th. Is that what it is?
It's August 30th.
All right. Thank you so much, Leslie.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, World Wide Web, YouTube. We'll talk to you soon. I got to go DIY over here. Oh, and it's on the Abaquaw